So let's start the Maamer Vekibel Hayehudim as Asher Eichelu Lasos. Like we said, is the Maamer that the Rebbe said by the Purim Farbrengen, the year Tafshin Yud Aleph. And the Maamer is based on the Maamer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Maamer Vekibel Hayehudim, which the Frierdiker Rebbe said in Tafresh Pei Zayin. So it starts off, Vekibel Hayehudim as Asher Eichelu Lasos. The Megillah says the Jewish people accepted that which they begun to do. The simple meaning is that they accepted the laws and the halachas of the Yom Tov of Purim. Chassidus explains, Vekibel Hayehudim es asher eichelu lasos, they accepted during the Yom Tov of Purim, or during the time of Achashverosh, they accepted that which they had only begun earlier in the time of Matan Torah. Because on Matan Torah, when the Jewish people said Nasa v'nishma, they accepted the Torah. They agreed to accept the Torah. That was only the beginning. That was only Eichelu Lasos. The full acceptance of the Torah was on Purim during the time of Achashverosh. Now, first of all, it's an interesting idea in general that there's two concepts. The Gemara also says this, Kimu Vekibel Hayehudim, and in Chassidus, in fact, it brings the Gemara as being something similar. The Rebbe says it's not exactly the same thing, but it's something similar. What does the Gemara say? Kimu v'kibul haYehudim, the Jews were mekayim, they sustained and they accepted. Kimu mashe kiblu kvar. In the time of Achashverosh, they made an existence, they gave sustenance to that which they had already accepted. Which means in the time of Matan Torah, when they said Nasa v'nishma, they accepted the Torah. But that accepting of the Torah was not something which was fully sustainable. It wasn't fully miskayim. When did they fully set it that it became real and fully fixed at the time of Achashverosh? What was lacking at the time of Kabbalah Torah? The Gemara tells us that Kafa Aleim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Har Kigigis. At the time when Hashem gave the Torah, He held the mountain over the Jewish people's head, and He said to them, which means He forced the acceptance of the Torah at that time was forced. And the Gemara says, Mikan Moida Rabba Lo Iraisa, because it wasn't something which was accepted fully. Nevertheless, says the Gemara, Hadar Kiblua B'mei Achashverosh, they re-accepted the Torah at the time of Achashverosh, like it says, Kimu Vekibel Hayehudim. There's an interesting thing. Tosfos over there in the Gemara in Shabbos asks a question. Why did Hashem have to hold a mountain over their heads? The Jewish people already said Nasa v'nishma. They already accepted the Torah. What was the need for force? Tosfos doesn't really give an answer for this. The Baal Shem Tov explains something interesting. The Baal Shem Tov explains, first of all, according to Chassidus, the idea of Kaf Aleim Har Kigigis is not in the simple meaning that Hashem forced them to accept the Torah by threatening them, but rather Har means a mountain what symbolizes the Ava, the hidden love that's inside every Jew to Hashem. Kaf Aleim Har Kigigis, Hashem brought out that hidden love. From above, He brought the idea that the Jewish people should want to accept the Torah. But the one thing is one that came out of love from the fact that Hashem revealed it. Nevertheless, since it was something that came from above, it wasn't something full and there was no kiyum to it. Now the Baal Shem Tov explains that at the time when the Jewish people accepted the Torah, they were inspired, they were excited. And a person could have later said, when I was inspired, I accepted the Torah. When I'll be inspired, I'll keep the Torah. But at a time when I'm not inspired, when I don't feel that need and that want to keep the Torah, it doesn't exist, that accepting that I accepted. And that's the reason for Kaf Aleim Har Kigigis. That Hashem said, even at a time when you don't want, even in a time when you're not inspired, even in a time when you don't have that excitement, you still have to keep the Torah because Hashem told you to keep the Torah. Nevertheless, there's something lacking because it comes from above, because Hashem said to do it. And that's why in the time of Achashverosh, there had to be the full acceptance, where the Jewish people accepted it fully on their own, where there was nothing that came milamayla, but rather was something that they accepted fully on their own. Chassidus says something different. Vekibel Hayehudim es asher yichelu lasos. At the time of Matan Torah, it wasn't an acceptance. It was only a beginning. When did they properly accept the Torah? In the time of Achashverosh. Which means that at the time when the Yidden said Nase v'nishma, it was a beginning, but it wasn't called an acceptance. It wasn't considered an acceptance. Whatever Matan Torah is, which is what we're going to learn in the Maimer, it wasn't something which was real at the time of Kabbalas HaTorah. It was the beginning. It was the beginning and the preparation for them to be able to fully accept it at the time of Achashverosh. Now in the Maimer, the Rebbe asks a question. The Frierdiker Rebbe asks this question, that l'chayra it's a davar pella, it's something that doesn't seem to make any sense. And what doesn't make sense? At the time when they were on this greatest spiritual high and physical high, that was only the haschala, that was only a chelu lasis, that was only the beginning of the preparation for accepting the Torah. And at the time when they were at an all-time low, that's when they accepted the Torah. And to understand this question even stronger, what's the idea of Kabbalas HaTorah? Hashem didn't create the Torah by Matan Torah. The Torah was there already, Alpayim Shana Kadma Torah Leilam. 2,000 years before there was a world, there was already a Torah. Kabbalas HaTorah was when Hashem enabled the Torah to come down into the world. What does that mean on a practical sense? It's something which we've been discussing in the previous Mamarim as well. And that is the idea that in truth, a person is down here in a world where, like Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev, the famous line of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Barditchev, that Hashem put us in a world where we don't see godliness, we don't see spirituality, we see the opposite. We see a world where godliness is hidden. And Hashem in this world wants us to connect to something which isn't our reality. How did the Eibishter do it and bring it? For that there had to be a special event called Kabbalas HaTorah. A special event connecting two opposites, connecting spirituality and the physical world that we live in. What did this Kabbalas HaTorah start with? The Eibishter said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. He revealed himself by Matan Torah, he revealed himself on Har Sinai. He, so to speak, gave his calling card to the world. Until then, there was a world, but the world was one existence, that godliness was hidden, and now Hashem made there be in this physical world the ability to recognize and to connect to Hashem. When's the best time for that? A time when that's already there in the world. A time that there is a revelation of godliness in the world. Matan Torah was right after Yitzias Mitzrayim, when Hashem revealed himself to the world. He showed how he controls nature of the world. This was the first time that Hashem showed on such a great way that the actual natural world is being controlled by Hashem. Then not only that, the Jewish people counted for 49 days. They put themselves on a level where they're connected also on their own to the spiritual world. And after that comes Matan Torah, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Hashem comes down with everything on Har Sinai. There was Kriyas Yamsuf in between when everyone was able to point. And there was the whole 49 days, and now Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. What greater time is there than that to be able to show and reveal godliness into the world for all times, that people should be able to connect to the Torah, connect to Hashem. Not only that, the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Maimer continues also that also physically the Jews were then on the highest level. They were free people. How often in Jewish history were the Jews free of any worries? They didn't have to worry about the world and what the world will say. At this time, it was right after Yitzias Mitzrayim. They were an independent nation. There was no one that they had to worry about. There was no one that they had to deal with. Even in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, even in the time of the Jewish kings, most time there was someone there that the Jewish people had to worry about the issues and the problems that they were causing. Here, they had the money, they had everything. They were free people. Look at, by contrast, what happened in the time of Achashverosh. The Jews were on the lowest possible level. Spiritually, they were as far away from godliness as possible. It was Galus. That is the content of Galus. Galus is Acheshach, Echase, Aretz, Beribu, Tzimtzumim, Valamis, Vestedim. The whole difference between Galus and Gula is Galus is that godliness is hidden. It's covered over. The darkness covers over the land. We don't see and appreciate godliness. That's the difference between Zman HaBayis, the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the time of Galus. The whole idea of Galus is that godliness is hidden and concealed. Not only that, as far as Galusin are concerned, this is one of the darkest Galuses. Because even after the Gula, even once they were redeemed, it's not like there was now a revelation of godliness, and they right away went and even built the Beis HaMikdash. It's Anoichi Haster Esther Minatera Minayin, Esther, which is the redemption of Purim. Minateras, when the words Anoichi Haster, the concealment continued even later. So at the time of the greatest concealment, physically the Jewish people were in the furthest state from being able to receive the godly revelation. There was then the Gzeira, the decree of Haman, Lahashmid, Laharigalabit, Chas v'sholom, destroy all the Jewish people. On one day there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, total destruction. How is it possible then that at the time when godliness was revealed, physically, spiritually, they were in the greatest point of history to be able to receive the Torah? That was only the beginning. It was the beginning. They said Na'aseh v'nishma. They began to be ready for getting the Torah. When could the Jewish people get the Torah and be able to connect? At a time when is the lowest time of history, both physically and spiritually. The truth is, it's very interesting because the Rebbe points out in a different Maimer that the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the truth is also the Mittler Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe, use the word Pele. It's a wonder. Usually in Chassidus, when there's a question, we use the word Sarich Lahavin. We must understand, or the like. Kasha. Here there's the word Pele. Pele, according to Chassidus, means something that has no place in Seichel. It as so far from understanding that it makes no sense whatsoever. It's not just a question. It's something which is nifla, which is as distant as possible from seichel of a person. It's beyond any way of being able to understand it. That's what this question is. This question is a pella. And it's possible that the reason why this question is a pella is because even after the answer, it still remains something that makes no sense. Actually, that's perhaps the reason why it's like that, because it makes no sense. And perhaps it's telling us, and first of all, this is, as we said, when there's a Maimer in Chassidus, it's not just telling us a nice idea, and it's not just talking about something that happened back then. The Maimer is specifically now and specifically in our time because it has a very strong connection to our time, and perhaps our time specifically it has a stronger connection than any other time. Our time is a time when it's a repeat, it's the same idea. We're being told that the Torah Chadasha, the new Torah of Mashiach, is something which is going to be revealed in our time. Not just it's going to be revealed in our time, it's going to be revealed in our time because we have a connection to it. Not just Mashiach will come soon in our time, but now already we are the ones that can actually be ready and prepared for Mashiach. And when we look at it, it seems to make no sense at all. Previous times were times when people were on a high level spiritually. There was Haskalah, there was Avodah, people knew Chassidus, people knew Nigla, people knew Shas, people davened, people were connected to Elokos. There was Gili Elokos. Mashiach means godliness will be revealed in the world. When was a better time than then? Now seems to be a time that we're the most distant even in the physical world. The whole reality of the world is the most distant from the revelation of godliness possible. So it's not just a question, how could it be that in our time Mashiach will come and in the earlier time it didn't come? How can it be that we are supposed to live it now in these moments in a time which is as far away and as distant away from Mashiach as possible? And again, what do we tell us? It's a pella. It's a pella means that it itself is the reason. What we're going to explain and what the answer of the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Maimer, what the Rebbe will explain is that at that time they had Mesirus Nefesh. At that time they had something that makes no sense. It was a time when they were in such a spiritual low. It was a time when they were in such a physical low. And yet at that time there was an entire year that the people could have converted. They could have converted, not the Gzeira of Haman wasn't that they should convert. The Gzeira of Haman was to kill every Jew. But if someone converted and became a Persian, the Persians wouldn't have done anything because as far as they're concerned, he's not Jewish. And yet no one even had a thought. There was no machshavas chutz. There wasn't even a thought of such a thing. That was the Mesiras Nefesh, and that's why then they accepted the Torah. They were beyond seichel. This beyond seichel, that's what enabled it to happen. Why do we need beyond seichel in order to accept the Torah, which is seichel? Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we'll start with that idea and we'll continue on in the Maimon.